organization that we know about, we've heard it preached about, their holiness is a ritual. Their holiness is a ritual. And I believe a big cause of that is because when this organization started, the Spirit was moving after Azusa Street, and as it built up, it was moving. But what they tried to do is stop and hinder the flow of the Spirit. They did. People and preachers and pastors began to try to control the move of the Spirit, and they suppressed it.
Right.
You can read all about it. They suppressed it. Right. And now today, you can go and you can feel the presence of God, but there's so much ritual.
Right.
It's ritual. What can I do with you? He said, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. See, there was all this law. He brought the Ten Commandments, and he brought some law, but the men heaped so much into it because they can't come close to God. So what we have to do is add more rituals. We cannot imagine and comprehend the mercies of God. We can't understand the unison with God that he desires. So let's put in rituals so that as we sacrifice, we feel closer to him. We can come to church and we can bring a sacrifice of worship. And we can bring a sacrifice of praise, a sacrifice of a voice, sacrifice of a musical ability, sacrifice of tithing and offering, a sacrifice of being there when sick. But you know what can lack? The Spirit.
Right.
He told the Pharisees who followed the letter of the law that if you looked at them, it would be hard to find fault with them looking at them. But what God saw was that they had all kinds of sacrifice and no mercy. There was all kinds of law, but no Spirit.
Right.
Let us acknowledge the Lord by being obedient,
Right.
but let us press on
Right.
into the spirit of the word. Let us not come just to the letter, but let us press on into the spirit of the word. Because he is like a rain. Let it rain in this place with the Spirit. He rains upon us and he saturates us. But if we just go to the letter, our love is like the mist and it fades away. It'll be there faithfully day upon day. But have you ever known anyone, besides someone who's out in the desert maybe, but they go out and they're thirsty and they go and they lick the leaves and the grass trying to take care of it? There's nothing there.
Right.
You can't refresh anybody with the dew that's on the grass and on the leaves. It has to pool together.
Right.
His rain satisfies. But how can we reflect him if our love is just that little mist?
Right.
Who are we going to refresh around us? Who? Let us press on to acknowledge him.
Absolutely right.
It's easier to follow Scripture than it is the Spirit because we know the ritual. We know the ritual. We know the things that appear right.
Yes.
But it's harder to get past our humanity into the spiritual right. The lesson is that God does not necessarily want the action, but the love that prompts the action.
All right.
God doesn't want necessarily the praise, but he wants the love that brings forth the praise.
Right.
He doesn't want tithing and offering so much as he wants this spirit of giving that gives and prompts the tithing and offering. He doesn't want all you to be faithful to church so much as he wants you to love church to the point that you wouldn't miss it for anything. You see the difference? You can go to work faithfully but perform poorly. Psalms 51. Again, my favorite chapter in the Bible. That's a little bit of trivia for you if anyone asks. Hey, what's Pastor's favorite chapter in the Bible? Just tell him Psalms 51. Verse 16. 17. He's starting with verse 16. You do not delight in sacrifice. I would bring it. You do not take pleasure in burnt offerings. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. O God, you will not despise. It's not the sacrifice, but it's the mercy. It's not the strict adherence, but it's the love of it. In 1 Corinthians chapter 13, he tells us that these actions are nothing.
Yes.
Tongues, nothing. Prophecy, nothing. Understanding and knowledge, nothing. Faithfulness, nothing. Faith to move mountains, nothing. Giving unto others, nothing. Surrender under trials and tests of the Lord, nothing. Unless you have the measure of love with it.
Amen.
He tells us you can do all these things, but they're nothing to God. They're nothing at all. They amount to nothing unless you have the love. Right. Love is what must prompt us and motivate these actions. Right. Without love, it is impossible to do the will of God.
Right.
Without love, it is impossible to know God. Right. Without love, you can never be obedient, no matter how strictly you follow the law. Right. No matter how faithfully you come to church. Without love for the church, it doesn't matter to anything. It doesn't matter to anything. You can give your tithe and an offering, but unless you give it out of love rather than just adherence, it is nothing to God. You can sing, you can play an instrument without love and praise, without love for God. It's nothing. What drives us here is our own human inability to feel close to Him.
All right.
Well, because we don't feel worthy. And we think that all these rituals, all these things are going to amount to anything. Because of our justification for anger. Do you know how many people come to church with anger so rooted in their hearts, and they come in here and dance and just glorify, and God's looking at us, that's nothing. Because if you're going to bring your offering, go first and be reconciled.
All right.
Then bring it, because it means something then.
Yes.
Your love is like the morning mist. Oh, it's there.
Yes.
But it ain't amounting to anything.
Right.
There's nothing to it. But let us press on. Let us not stop at the first step. Let us press on. Let us press on in acknowledgement. Let us press on. Let us press on. Let us press on. Let there be a fire within us as we go and witness. Let there be a fire in us as we go and demonstrate the love of God, the contentment of God. Love. Without love, what do we got here? Without love, what are we doing? Without love, what is this? This is all a bunch of hooey and nonsense without God, without the love of God. I want to tell you something right now. I don't know who you are, I don't know. But God put it on my heart to say this. You must make everything right before Him.
Yes.
Pretense is just as good as nonsense.
All right.
You're not any closer to God by the pretense. You're not going to be saved by pretense.
That's it.
The only way for you to find the peace, and I'm speaking this to you right now by the word of the Lord, the only way you're going to find peace is by yielding and giving Him everything.
That's all right.
It's the truth.
Yes, amen.
I don't know who I'm talking to, but there's someone here today that needs to understand this. Because your salvation depends on it.
All right.
Your life depends on it.
Hallelujah.
God is so merciful that He would injure you. That's a hard thing to understand is a man or a woman. It's a human. He loves you so much that he would injure you just to bring you back, to heal you. God is so merciful that he would tear you apart with his word just to restore you.
Right. Praise God.
It's not this life that he has planned as your reward, but he's doing everything in his power to get you prepared for the next one.
Amen.
That's why it's so wonderful that the bishop preached what he preached this morning. Because we let things that disappoint us lead us to a place of ritual. We don't want others around us to know that we don't like what God has given us in our lives. Hey, you know, to tell you that I've had an easy life, that's not even close to the truth. I've got scars on my body and I've got scars in my heart. But I love God and I trust him.
Amen.
I'm glad that he brought up Samson. Samson had a difficult life, although he had the strength. His heart led him to places that made life difficult. But God made his life that way to destroy the Philistines.
Right.
Man, that's a difficult thing when you are Samson. And how many of you today are a Samson? Where you don't like what God has taken from you or allowed, and it bothers you, it's a thorn in the flesh, and it motivates every decision that you make, everything that you do for God. Yeah, you come up here with a pretense, and you can do things for the Lord, but inside, inwardly, you're so discouraged because of what God has removed or not allowed in your life. You need to understand something. What he's doing is for your benefit.
Praise the Lord.
I don't know why. About 2 years ago, Brother Robbie got injured. Had a promising job right away. I don't know why. But I know this. God spoke to me as I was praying before service. God is going to bless you out of this. I don't know how. But I want you to understand. It's more than you've ever asked. And it's more than you ever imagined. Hallelujah. 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 I can't begin to understand the ways of God. But I know his ways are greater than mine. His understanding is greater than mine. And so he desires mercy, not sacrifice. He doesn't want these rituals. Hallelujah. But he wants love. It's easy. It's easy to just get into a ritual. But I've seen a change in Brother Robbie this past year. Where he wasn't just coming out of ritual, but out of this, God's created a love for him. And I know that for a fact. Because this year you come in pain before. You've come in a great deal of pain, but you came because you love God. It changed your life. Understand this, that by doing this, God made you a stronger man spiritually. Hallelujah. He told him, look, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off.
Right.
That's what? Cut it off. Your eyes are offending you, gouge it out.
Yes.
Everything to God leads up to us making heaven. That's why sometimes he injures us. Sometimes physically. Sometimes emotionally. Sometimes mentally. But understand that as he injures, before he even injured you, he already had the plan to heal you.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Jesus.
He's so good that way. His ways are beyond my own. And so, whoever you are today that I've been talking to, it's time to let it go. Whatever it is that's been bothering you so much that you feel, and I say this because I felt it in the past, robbed. You feel robbed. You feel like it was unfair and you were robbed. He's done it for you. To strengthen you. And to bless you. to restore you,
Yes.
and make you greater than you ever were before.
Yes, amen.
But what he's saying today is, stop being just a ritualistic Christian, but be mine.
Yes.
Be my child.
Amen.
He wants you to be his love today. Finally, in Isaiah chapter 1. Isaiah chapter 1, starting in verse 10. I want to thank everybody for being obedient to this today. Bringing the tithing offering. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 10. Hear the word of the Lord, you rulers of Sodom. Listen to the law of our God, you people of Gomorrah. The multitude of your sacrifices, what are they to me? Says the Lord.
All right.
I have more than enough of burnt offerings, of rams and the fat of fattened animals. I have no pleasure in the blood of bulls and lambs and goats.